Hey, Georgia Studies students. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend and I hope you have a great week. Happy November. We are just flying through the school year. It's unbelievable how fast time is going. So we are starting a brand new unit. We just ended the Revolutionary War and guess what? We won. We beat Great Britain. Unbelievable. So now what? So now we are a country, a very young country, and now we are no longer a colony. We are now the state of Georgia. So what's going on in the state of Georgia? So we're going to talk about the years from 1789 to about 1840. So what happened during this time is called westward expansion, because that's exactly what happened to the population of Georgia. We all started moving west. So remember, most of the colonists were situated around the coast, the Atlantic Ocean. So we had the big city of Savannah, the first capital of Georgia. And then up the coast, if you go north, you will hit the big city of Augusta, still on the coast. So those were the first two capitals of Georgia. We've had a total of 5. Of course, the one that is the capital now has been the capital for the longest amount of time. But when the population of Georgia started moving west, the capitals would move west also to stay right in the center of the population of the state. All right, so I don't know if a lot of you knew this, but did you know that the University of Georgia was the very first public university in the United States of America? Now, there were other colleges that had been around for a long time, though they were private universities. Like we have Princeton and Yale and Harvard, very old schools, but those were private schools. So the first public education was the University of Georgia. So it was chartered on paper in 1785. However, we didn't actually have classes until I think it was about 1801. So the University of North Carolina also says that they're the oldest college on paper because they actually had classes before we did, even though our school existed first on paper. But anyway, it started out as being called Franklin College. It was named after Benjamin Franklin. Abraham Baldwin, that name should be very familiar to you, hopefully. He wrote the charter and he was the first president of UGA. Abraham Baldwin was one of the Georgia signers of the U.S. Constitution. There were 2 of them for the U.S. Constitution, William Few and Abraham Baldwin. So Abraham Baldwin was a very important guy, very intelligent. He was the first president of UGA. Now, the school closed for 2 years during the Civil War. It almost went bankrupt after the year, but was classified as a land grant university, and the school was saved. Because they took on that title as a land grant university, that's when they started teaching agricultural and mechanical arts colleges. So there's Mr. Baldwin. Famously said, an educated populace is necessary for a free government. Yes, makes sense. All right, so like I said, this standard we call westward expansion. As you can tell, every time the capital moved, it went further west. So we started out with Savannah, first capital, and then up the coast, we go to Augusta. It was switched to Augusta during the Revolutionary War. And then we moved to a little place that no one's ever heard of called Louisville. Louisville was named after the French king, King Louis. And then we went to Milledgeville in 1807 to 1868. And that's when Georgia came out of the United States. We seceded from the Union. And then finally, from 1868 until now, we've had a capital called Atlanta. Atlanta was actually named after a railroad. So there's an acronym, SALMA. Can you see it on your screen? SALMA. So if you'll remember that word SALMA, it'll help you remember the capitals in order. Savannah, Augusta, Louisville, Milledgeville, Atlanta. All right. And why did I tell you the Georgia Capitals moved westward? To stay in the middle of the population. Now, during this time when Georgia was this new upcoming state and we wanted people to come, bring your families, this is a great place to live. So we were trying to convince people to come live here. And so they gave out thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of land. Now, if you try to buy 1 acre of land, it costs so much money. But they were giving out land different ways. They had a couple of different ways to give out land. The first way that they gave land was called the head right system. So basically it started out giving they started out by giving free land to veterans of the American Revolutionary War. And then after a time, they said, all right, if you are the head of a household, we're going to give you land, 50 acres of land, because you're the head of the home. And so they started calling this the head right system. So after land was distributed to Civil War veterans, the head of the household had the right to claim 200 acres. Some of them got 50, but some of them got 200. So the question I posed is, why did the system end? Because 200 acres is a lot, right? So eventually they ran out of land. They promised more land than they actually had to give away. But anyway, so they gave away land for about 70 years, about 75 years, about 70 years. All right, the next way they gave out land, as we moved the Creek Indians, we're going to talk about getting rid of the Creek Indians. We kept pushing them farther and farther west, and as they started moving west, white men started taking up the land that they once inhabited. And so we gained all this land over a period of time since we were such bullies and got rid of the Creek Indians and then the Cherokees to the northwest part of the state. But anyway, so in 1805, we were able to get a lot of Creek Indians out of here. So we took over their land, and then we had more land to give away. So at that time, they decided that we were going to use what they call the land lottery. So just like the lottery that you think of today, you go and you buy a ticket. They pull out a ticket from a barrel. If you have the winning ticket, you win a bunch of land. And so they did this for quite a while. They did this for almost 30 years. Almost 30 years, they gave away hundreds and hundreds and not hundreds, but thousands and thousands of acres of land. Now, if you look at a little map, if you were in class, we would play a little game where I would put everybody's number in a box and pull it out. And you would get to read about the land that you just won. Now, some people, were very lucky. They had great land, land that they could farm on, land that had, maybe some fresh water on it. But other people got land that ended up being in the middle of a swamp, and that was your land. So whatever you chose to do, you could live there or you didn't have to, but you didn't get to negotiate. Once your ticket was pulled, if you won some land, you got the land, whatever they gave you. And if you didn't like it, well, then that was too bad. But anyway, so there ended up being 8 times that they did this big land lottery where they got people to buy tickets, and then they pulled the names and the tickets out of the barrel, and you either won or you didn't. Now, there was another scandal that went on as far as giving out this land. So we call this the Yazoo Land Act. So we had a governor and a general assembly. So what they did is they sold all this land, which is now part of Mississippi and Alabama. They sold it to 4 land companies for very little money. In fact, people figured out that the politicians were bribed. So bribes, like let's say that you go to a fancy restaurant and they don't have any tables to give out, and so you give the maitre d' $20 to get your name in and get a table. That's called a bribe, right? Well, bribes are illegal. Well, they figured out that these land companies were bribing these politicians to sell them this land, and then they were going to turn around and sell it for lots of money and become very, very rich. And they promised the politicians, we're going to give you some of the money we make. Well, so they did sell all of this land, but once the citizens figured out that all these people were being bribed, and these land owners were making so much money, it ended up going to court, and the state of Georgia ended up taking that land, and they ended up settling all these lawsuits of people who had purchased the land from those land companies. And anyway, the federal government ended up taking all of that land, which is now Mississippi and Alabama, because of this big controversial land fraud. The Yazoo land fraud is what they called it. So what was the results? Georgia lost thousands of acres of territory to the United States government. The government came in and took all that land, which is now Mississippi and Alabama. Georgia's western boundary was moved back to the Chattahoochee River, because at one time we went all the way out to the Mississippi River. So we lost thousands of acres of land, and Georgia voted out most of its Georgia assembly members, like our legislative power, because of this great big land the scandalous, fraudulent land deals. All right, so I'm sure you've heard of the next guy. His name is Eli Whitney. He invented what we call the cotton gin. Now, some people are under the impression that they use cotton gins to pick cotton, but they didn't. You still had to go out and pick cotton. But the part after, of course, picking cotton all day would be a very hard job. But then inside the white fluffy cotton, there are these tiny little seeds. And so people had to spend all day pulling these seeds out of the fluffy white part of the cotton. And it would take a long time, and your hands would get so tired, and it would make sores on your hands. So what the cotton gin did, it cleaned the cotton. You just put all of the white fluffy cotton in that machine. You would crank it, and then it would remove all of those seeds. And so you could clean 50 pounds of cotton per day, when by hand you could clean 1 pound of cotton per day. So 50 times more per day. That's a ton of cotton, you guys. That's why this cotton gin, the simple little machine, industrialized. I mean, it totally revolutionized, I should say, the cotton industry. And so that's why cotton became king in the South, because we went from cleaning one person could clean 1 pound of cotton a day to 50 pounds per day per person. As a result of that, slavery became huge in the South. So, you know, now we have all of these people making lots of money on the cotton industry. We need people to go out and pick that cotton, and now we can clean it so much faster. And then the railroads started developing throughout Georgia. And so now we could quickly transport all of this cotton that was being cleaned quickly. And so cotton became king in the South. So like I said, here's a piece of cotton. If you look closely at the picture, you can see all those little seeds in there. So you can't do much with cotton until you clean it. And that's what the cotton gin did. Clean the cotton fast, fast, fast. Excuse me. So Georgia's first railroad was chartered back in 1832, and it grew rapidly to get cotton to market more efficiently. By the 1850s, Georgia had more tracks than any other southern state. Railroads led to the founding of a city called Terminus, which would become Atlanta, the first major city in the United States not built on a navigable river. Isn't that amazing? All the other capitals of Georgia, big cities, were built because it was close to the river. So we could transport anything we wanted to on the river, and these big cities developed along the river, but not Atlanta. There's no big river right through Atlanta. It was because of the railroad. Georgia became a major transportation center, which made it a target late in the Civil War. All right, so the invention of the railroad did 3 things. I almost said 4 things, but then I stopped for some reason. I don't remember why. Railroads allowed Georgia to trade with other states. Railroads increased the amount of transportation between states. Railroads shortened the time a person would spend traveling, and railroads helped everything, I suppose. They just helped. All right, so a few questions from my little discussion just now. Hopefully you were paying attention. What 2 modern day states were located where Georgia's Yazoo land was? You know, Mississippi and Alabama. How could white men obtain land in Georgia between 1789 and 1840? 2 different ways. The headright system and land lotteries. Good. What is true about a cotton gin? A cotton gin picks cotton very quickly. A cotton gin caused the production of cotton to decrease in Georgia. Or the cotton gin making it faster to separate cotton seed from the white fluffy boil. C. What were two negative effects of the invention of the cotton gin? Well, the first one was the dramatic increase of slavery. And the second thing is that we became very, very dependent on just one crop. We became a one crop economy. So when cotton failed, which it will in the 1920s, early 19 teens, early 1920s, it devastated our economy because our economy was based on one crop. So that was two negative effects of the cotton gin slavery and a one cash economy, or one crop economy, I should say. All right, what two inventions led cotton to be king in the South? The cotton gin and railroads. And why did Georgia's capitals move west? Because people were moving west to stay in the middle of the population. And what does Selma help us remember? Savannah, Augusta, Louisville, Milledgeville, Atlanta is the 5 capitals of Georgia in order. All right, so that's what you guys are going to be looking at this unit. So we're going to have a 2-week unit. We'll be done right before Thanksgiving. That crazy. About 2.5 weeks, I suppose. All right, you guys, I hope you have a great week, and I will see you Thursday for our meeting. Bye, guys.